What's good, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, presented, of course, in partnership with the Cover One Sports Network. I am one of your two hosts this evening, Anthony Prohaska, joined by Eric Turner for a fun episode
Yeah.
that, yes, this is the first time we've dove into the mock draft area in an
Yeah.
episode here in the film room. And it's something that we were talking about this offline, how addicting it is, like just going down the rabbit hole of like mock after mock after mock.
Mhm.
But they're fun to do. And for us, Eric, the one we're going to do tonight is from the perspective of the Buffalo Bills in terms of positional value, positional scarcity, scheme fit, skill
Mhm.
set needs and fits. This isn't just us going through and being like, hey, I really like this guy. I want the Bills to
Right.
take this guy. And it's like, well, he doesn't make sense for the Bills, and that's not going to happen. This is with the idea in mind of fitting the Bills from a structural perspective. And it's also exciting that it leads the conversations based on how the board can fall, positions versus positions,
Mhm.
players versus players. It leads to a lot of conversation.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun because again, we study film. You guys are in the film room with us every week, and we watch these games, both sides of the ball. We present these film rooms to you guys, so we have a pretty good idea on film what is asked of them. When it comes to techniques, X's and O's. But we also have the historical data. When it comes to measurables and archetypes and stuff like that. So when we do mock drafts, like we're gonna do the next couple weeks. It's a little bit of both. It's from, what we think the Bills would do, but it's also, where we rank some of these players and evaluate them on our board. But again, with the Bills in mind, with their archetypes, with the type of scheme that they run and coaching they get. So that's what makes it fun when it comes to this stuff. And this is not something I don't think I've ever done a mock draft in all of the years of the film room. I don't think we've ever done a live one. So this should
No.
be fun. Should be a fun exercise. And like you said, it is addicting. This is one of the first years that I've actually taken part in this, the mock draft on PFF. And it's fun because like there's a rumor that dropped today that the Bills want to trade up, right? Trade
Yeah.
up to get either a skill player or offensive lineman. So then immediately when I had a few minutes on lunch break, I'm like, okay, if we were to do that, I go on the simulator and start talking about that. So it is fun, but again, it's more of an exercise, right? It's an exercise to again, value at positions of need and stuff like that. And when those two lines cross and intersect, but it's also just, again, it's just fun to do during the off season. And I know a lot of you guys have been doing it for several months now. Some of you guys are so addicted, you do it during the season, but this is our first live one and I'm super excited to get this kicked off.
Eric, let's talk about that piece on the potential of the Bills trading up. So Matt Miller, formerly of Bleacher Report, now of ESPN, was mentioned today as stating that the Bills have been potentially making calls or looking to move up from
Right.
pick 27. You mentioned, kind of the association with it being for a receiver or an offensive tackle. If the Bills were to move up from 27, who would be a player that you would look for them to target based on, again, who you like in terms of your evaluation, but also
Yeah.
what this team needs, given how the board would look at that point?
I think it's our offensive tackle one. I think you share that sentiment. Peter
Mhm.
Skoronski from Northwestern, just a technical beast when it comes to the offensive line and offensive line technique. I got some cut ups there from some of the games I scouted this year and some of the pluses and strengths of him. And the knock with him though is, and maybe why he could fall, are his measurables. He's a
Mhm.
guy that has those shorter arms. So a lot of people were like, hey, if he doesn't work at tackle, he could bump inside to guard because he has 32 and 1/4 inch arm length. So that's a little small. That's a little under what the Bills typically like, either whether you're looking at Bean's draft history or Aaron Cromer's influence. Usually those guys like in the 33.5 to 34-inch arm length prototype. So he is a little short armed, but as you'll see if you watch the film and some of these clips, he is just so technical. He knows his self. He's so self-aware about his skills and measurables that he knows how to beat, certain guys that may be bigger, maybe longer, maybe stronger than him. And he does it with that technique, that hand placement, just perfectly getting it inside and versus the run and pass, knowing how to generate leverage and move guys, even with being closer. Obviously, if you have 32.25 inch arm length, you're going to be closer. So
Mhm.
you're controlling with your hands, right? But you're also moving people with your legs. And he can do that And then there's some flash of violence, as I put in those notes. There is some violence to his game late, right through the whistle. So he's, as I mentioned there, he's a draft crush of mine. And so if the Bills were to trade up to go get someone, I would hope it'd be for my offensive tackle one, a guy that maybe could fall into, the mid round, maybe because the NFL values and cherishes that arm length when we're talking tackles, especially left tackle.
I second that notion completely on Skoronski. Like you mentioned, he's OT1 for both of us. It's a shame that the conversation is centered around measurables and arm length, while it is legitimate and I understand it, because he's just such a polished player technically, like mentally and then physically, like technically. You watch him, just how he's able to work into a various amount of sets, and his footwork in each, his hand placement, his hand power, like just how he constantly is able to get defenders off kilter and take their momentum and use it against them, or get them early and turn and win leverage. He's such a good player. You nailed it. Like I would absolutely love that if the Bills were to trade up for Skoronski. I'm also going to go with an offensive tackle that I would like to see them trade up for. I would, if I had to cast a vote, I would put it for Skoronski, but for the sake of diversification, I'm going to go with someone who I feel like this is going to be no surprise to anybody who follows me on Twitter or listens to anything I've done since like early February. Mr. Darnell Wright, who you've pulled up on the screen now. And he's, you're going to get more right tackle only skill set and use for him. But given the need of where this Bills offensive line is, and this isn't to say, I think for either of us, this isn't to say Spencer Brown is done, jettison him into the sun, it's over. But for me, I'm going to continue to maintain, whether it's because of the injuries or the inexperience, whatever have you, where the Bills are right now, Spencer Brown is just too mercurial at the right tackle spot. Now, could he start to stabilize this year and start to scratch more of that ceiling? Sure. I still think it's too big of a risk given how up and down he's been, and I would like to get off of that roller coaster. And Darnell Wright, for me, is an option to get off of that roller coaster at right tackle. My favorite verbiage to use for him is that he's an athletic grizzly bear. And you watch the physicality, you watch the power, you see the athleticism, which you should not be able to see given that he's around 340 pounds. Like he came in, we saw him at the Senior Bowl, Eric, at 335 plus pounds. And you would not have guessed that the way he was moving. He's able to anchor down versus speed to power. I would like to see some more work there, but he's able to absorb pass rushers regularly. He's got some athleticism to climb to the second level. I want to see him clean up some of his hand placement, but he's got good hand strength. He's got good pop. He's got a nice, strong right hand stab and punch that he uses. And then what's nice is because he'll use that regularly, he'll then feign it. And he'll use it to get edges to declare early, and then he'll take advantage. He can work out of a jump set, a 45, and a vertical. I love dudes who use a good snatch and trap, and he's got one of the best in this class.
He might be number one. Number one. And
up there.
It plays to your point about, his ability to absorb power. That's a technique that, guys use when guys go speed to power and go those bull rushes. They're, extending those long arms, and he just snatches them down from different angles and different sets. He's definitely a guy that puts guys into the turf quite often, whether it's in the run or the pass game.
Yeah, he's getting dudes to just kind of look foolish, and sometimes it's almost effortless, and I feel bad for the edge rushers against him. And then, in the run as well, you see the physicality, you see the power. There's several reps where he's crashing down and just completely caving in the entire right side of the line with what he's doing. So he's a guy who I initially thought would be very safe for the Bills to get at 27, but as we've gone forward, he's
crazy, man.
Right? Like
people were like, "Oh, he's a second rounder at the Senior Bowl," and we literally sat down on the couch, got ready to record, and said, "Who's our standout?" Darnell Wright.
Yep.
What second round? What are you talking about? This guy's a first rounder.
Yep.
That's exactly what we said on that recording, and it blew my mind that he was getting second round talk. And I know it was mainly because it was a single season flash in the pan type year with him at right tackle. I believe he played some left tackle last year. When going back through some of the film, and it wasn't as pretty. No. But he settled in at right tackle. And when we saw him again in person against some of that competition at the Senior Bowl, we're like, "You said he's a second rounder?" We're like, no, this guy's a first rounder. First round talent. And part of it for me too is being able to speak to him at the Senior Bowl. Yeah, and that was awesome. I talked about it with you, that I immediately ran over to you and showed you what he said after this one question I asked him, because it was just so good. Like, I asked him how he studies film and how he prepares for the week, and the mental game. We talked about it that night when we recorded on the couch in Mobile.
the mental game is what separates players so much from like bad to good, good to great, great to Hall of Fame. And his answer, when I asked him, how do you prepare? What do you do with film? His answer was just so, for me, next level and professional. And he talked about, I study my opponents and I put them from a pass rush perspective. I put them into buckets. Are they
Yeah.
power? Are they finesse? Are they speed? And then based on what they are, I cater my practicing that week towards preparing for that bucket of rushers.
Mhm.
And I was just like, oh, that's really
That
smart.
blew me away. Yeah, that blew me away, the type of studying and then practicing how to defend or how to block that up in practice during the week. And again, almost kind of like what Cromer talks about and putting guys in different positions, like
Mm,
understanding your body positioning and
mm,
how guys are going to attack you. But you got to have a counter. You got to have ways to keep yourself between the rusher and the quarterback. And so it was super heady and intelligent for him to come out and say that. And it's funny because it was like a day or two later he said the same thing to Daniel Jeremiah. I was like, yo, Anthony got that already. He outscooped you. Stop it.
I didn't even know. I didn't even know he said that to Jeremiah. I feel like I would have been all over. Like I was there first. No, no way.
It was awesome.
It was just. It was. It was cool to just see, yeah, that mental side connect with the physical piece, and I think in watching, Skoronski's play style, you see how high of a football IQ that he has. And again, this is I think whether you're going for Skoronski or Wright, I think for us, it's tied to that positional need. It's tied to the value. It's also tied to the player in terms of their skill set, their traits, what we've
Yeah.
evaluated, and what it could mean for this team long term. And, for the Josh Allen crowd that wants a weapon, you're still not doing bad if you're, protecting in the trenches and
Right.
giving Josh Allen more time, keeping him clean, and allowing him to kind of sit back, survey, or escape the pocket in better ways because he's got more stability in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, if you're keeping him clean, he's gonna dissect defenses with his arm and his legs. And so going offensive line, those two guys that we just mentioned, Skoronski and Wright. I mean, if they're gonna move up, I don't want them to just because they are
Same.
short on resources.
Same.
And the thick of the draft, like the good part of the draft, is like in the middle, like and the transition from the first quarter to the middle half of the draft.
Mm,
So I would like to keep them in those areas with their draft picks, but because in order to move up you're going to have to give a pretty decent asset, I would think,
yeah.
this year. Maybe next year. I don't know what type of value they would opposing teams would take into that. But if they're going to move up past like 19, 18, it's probably going to take, one of those, a third round pick probably or a fourth round pick. So that does worry me. But unless it's going up to get a premium position like a tackle, like a wide receiver, I
Well,
won't like it. Like right now, talking about it, I don't really like it unless
agreed.
they're going up for guys like that, right, Ant?
Yeah.
But then on draft night, depending on how it shakes out, you're like, oh, this guy fell. He was there. They moved up and got him. That makes sense. So I could
Mhm.
be talked into it, but it's going to be that night
Yes.
when it goes down, if it goes down. But again, it's rumor season. Like these type of things come out all
Mhm.
the time. So with that said, let's transition to this mock draft. So we're going to use PFF simulator here, and I'm going to keep things almost right down the middle. I'm not sure what do you normally use it on? And do you
The
normally, I
same,
kind of
right
do
down
like
the
right
middle.
down the
Yeah, I
middle.
use
Yeah.
their default settings. I don't want to, skew anything towards any type of, board predictability.
Right, right. So we'll do this. This is pretty fair, I think, and I'll slow it
Mhm.
down just a little bit. And we'll just talk through this. We're not going to play roles. We're just going to talk through it, see how this
It's
goes.
I'm laughing because at this point, I know, like, if I start to offer trades, I'll be like, okay, I know I can get 36 and 73 from the Rams if I do this, this, and this. I know what I can do with Seattle. Like, I've been here so many times, and it's just so fun.
End of the first round, man. It's tough. It's one of those things where again, a lot of those guys at the end of the first round are
Oh,
going to
wow.
have second round
Van
grades.
Ness goes before Anderson.
Wow. So starting at the
And
tackle run there.
Anthony Richardson was the second QB. Nolan Smith goes 14. I know
All
you
right, I'm gonna stop.
love Nolan Smith.
Yeah, I'm not big on Nolan Smith. I see flashes. And I don't want him
Oh,
going to the Patriots either. I don't want him chasing
same.
Josh Allen around for the next few
Oh,
years.
Jackson
Um,
Smith and Jigba goes 11 to the
yeah, so
Titans.
so he's I think if it was a receiver, I think he's a guy that Bills fans would want
Mhm.
being to move up for, but going up to 11 is a little too far, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So Johnston, the other wide receiver,
Okay.
went at 16.
Not a
Cansey
fan.
went at 17.
Wow.
So yeah, so I don't know. What do you think? You want to just stay put and see what comes onto the board and let the board come to us, or what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm even if it is for like, I would be okay if they traded up for Wright and Skoronski, obviously, but I do feel like there are other upgradable spots on this team that you need your draft capital for. So I'm very okay just sitting and kind of letting the board
Let's let it roll. Let's let it roll.
Oh, there goes Zay Flowers.
I'm
Everybody.
not big
Oh,
on Miles Murphy. Are you big on Miles Murphy, dude?
you know what's funny? I watched him like 4 or 5 times because the first time I watched him was against Carolina in the ACC championship, and I was very mad, but he also got doubled a bunch. The more I've watched, the more I've liked him. I actually think he could be there at 27 for the Bills. I initially thought he'd be gone in the first 15. So I like him, but I'm not tremendously high.
I'm not big on him. I think I have a mid to late day 2 grade on him. I can't. I don't see it, man. I just don't see the burst and get off at the line of scrimmage. I think he's good against the run, and he's very strong once he extends. But I just don't see it. All right, so
no, I don't see the pass rush refinement either. Like
no.
There. Oh, interesting. Brian
So the talk today as well, on top of moving up to get a guy and tight end. Where's your thoughts on Michael Mayer or any of the tight ends if they were to drop? The Bills taking one of those guys at pick 27. What are your thoughts on that?
So it depends on what you're looking for from the tight end position. You know, Mayer is kind of the do-it-all tight end as a receiver and as a blocker. Got good size, good hands, functions really well at the catch point. Dalton Kincaid is basically a power slot receiver in a tight end's body. My favorite tight end, I really, really, really like Sam Laporta. I actually was talking with Lance Zierlein a bit on Twitter the other day. He's more down on Laporta, and I kind of wanted to gauge his thoughts. But I like Laporta as an overall well-rounded tight end, what he can do blocking in the run and in the pass. I don't love the idea of tight end at 27. And if we're talking about the Bills, it's mainly because of that fit. Like, are they gonna? I don't think they would commit to the 12 personnel piece that hard. And if you're going to go tight end that early, that means they're committing to 12 personnel, and that's what they want to do. And I think 12 personnel is an ultimate dictation piece. Like, I really like that idea. I like what you can do if you've got 2 tight ends who can block and function as receivers, and all of a sudden what you can do in terms of making defenses match when base personnel or, outmatching them if they want to stay in nickel. I really like the potential of it. I just don't see the Bills until the Bills show me that they're going to do that. I'm not going to think they're going to do it.
That's the big piece, man. Until they show me that they can do it, until they show me that they can utilize a tight end for an entire season, let alone 2, because it took Dorsey half the season to get, Dawson Knox involved, especially when they were going to defenses were playing more man coverage and in the red zone. It's like, dude, he scored like 90% of his touchdowns in the red zone. Why aren't you targeting Dawson Knox in the red zone at the very least?
Given Dorsey's history in Carolina, they used a bunch of tight ends. And then even in his playing career at Miami, they were a heavy 2 tight end team, like with what he was doing with Jeremy Shockey and their whole cast of characters. Like, I thought last year we'd see better tight end utilization and or more 12. But until they show it, I can't predict it.
All right, so
Joey Porter Jr. Of course they don't need a corner.
And hey, PFS says that's a need. It says DB's a need. So,
man,
I've never seen him drop. To be honest,
for the value, I want Joey Porter. But it doesn't make any sense. But I want Porter.
And to trade out, I mean, you're dropping into the 50s and 60s, so it's kind of pointless. So, where do you want to look? Where do you want to start? I'm not high on Brian here from Clemson. I'm not sure what are your thoughts on him. There are several pretty good interior defenders. Maisie Smith, one of my guys. Benton, obviously one of our guys.
Smith. Benton and Smith are fantastic. I even like Ika a bit, even though he doesn't hold up against double teams as well as I would want him to for his size. He's more actually athletic and nimble, but I like him still. Kobe Turner is somebody who I love from Wake Forest.
You post a bunch about him. Yeah,
he's awesome in terms of what he represents as a player. Oh man, Brzee falling is interesting. I want Joey Porter for the let's appease the masses first. What wide receivers are available?
I know it's Addison at the top, then Downs, Dell, Michael Wilson, Rashee Rice.
Ooh, what do you think about Jordan Addison?
Dude, this is the way I want to talk about. People are like, man, but what about his measurables? It's like those measurables weren't issues when I watched him on film. Now, are you going to ding him a little bit? Sure. But like more than half a round? No. I think I liked him as one of the top receivers before he got to the combine and ran that and measured all of that. So I think he's just super smooth, man. I think he's one of those high floor guys. When you're talking the wide receivers in this draft, especially in this draft, I think he's, he can win outside, he can win inside. He's got some like a similar pace and style to running in his gait to OBJ, where I always call it like a duck style, where his knees are like in and he can cut on a dime going in and or out. His 90-degree and 45-degree cuts are outstanding and they're so clean. And that's why you always hear people refer to him as smooth, because you don't see a hitch in his breaks at all. And he's just very good at attacking leverage. And again, when we're talking outside or inside, because a lot of people think that he could really just eat from the slot. I think he could play outside, even with, again, some of his measurables.
Yeah.
The league's different now. Like guys like Zay Flowers, Downs to some extent, even Nathaniel Dell. Yes, years past, like, maybe they're not boundary guys, but there are things you can do as a coach to mimic the slot. You can, something as simple as tightening up an alignment, having them tighter to the tackle, tighter to the tight end, off the line of scrimmage. You're still getting free releases. You're still getting those two-way goes as if you were in the slot. But I like Addison, man. I think I have a late first-round grade with him. And based on the guys, let's see, who do we have at the top here? I mean, Porter's up there.
He's only one of 2 receivers for me that have first-round grades in this draft. So I second your notion.
So Mayer's the other first-rounder I have here. I'm not big on what's his last name? Bresee. I'm big on him either.
What he's got flashes and spurts on tape in 2022. He was coming back from a torn ACL. He's got some really, really dominant reps physically, and bursty, quick get off hand technique. I find him very intriguing at 27. But my thought is I like the positional value. Like, again, somebody, not to get too ahead of ourselves, like I would rather have Kobe Turner in round 3 or 4 potentially, like given what I've seen on tape and the advanced metrics for Kobe Turner. Here's the other piece too, who we're not seeing in this initial part that we're scrolling. The linebacker conversation, Eric, because they have Henley ahead of Campbell. Okay, that's a whole other conversation. But for me, it feels like if the Bills don't address linebacker here at 27, or say they trade back to the early 30s, whatever, if that first pick isn't a linebacker, I don't think any of the linebacker fits that this team needs lasts until 57. And for the people who are throwing out, Dorian Williams and Demarion Overshawn, and I've seen Ivan Pace Jr. level, all 3 of them right there too. Those guys aren't fits given what they do. Even Deion Henley, I like Deion Henley. I don't have him higher than Jack Campbell, but he's more of a will and an all-around athlete guy. No, he's not going to fit what the Bills are trying to do. You have to take that scheme fit into perspective. I don't love taking linebacker at 27 at all. It is tough because I don't think the value at 27 is necessarily there with going linebacker, but my fear is if we don't take linebacker now, we're not going to get one for the rest of the draft. It's that need.
And that makes sense. And yes, I know a lot of people are like, just trade back 5, 7, 8 spots and get them there. You guys, again, we talked about it. End of the first round, you're going to have a lot of those second-round grades at the end of the first round. And Jack Campbell, for me, is in the second round, early second round. So again, taking him at 27 isn't a reach. And you guys got to think about this. If you're grading all these players and a guy goes at pick 25 versus pick 40, that grade difference is probably 0.2. It's like so minute. It's so small. It's not materially different that, you can't get hung up on that. And that's one of the downfalls of these mock draft simulators is it convinces people otherwise. But I agree with you. I think Campbell here at 27 isn't that much of a reach, even though we're at 27 and his rank is 45.
Oh my God. That kills me when I'll do a mock and someone will be like, well, you got a D- for that pick. And I'm like, because based on what PFF is ranking, like what are we doing there? And so for me right now, if we're looking at it here at 27, it would be between Addison, Campbell, Mozzie Smith. I really just like Smith a lot in terms of what he can do and what he would offer the Bills defense. But from a positional value and scarcity standpoint, I feel like it's Jack Campbell.
Okay. So Grinding the Mocks, a cool freaking website that kind of pulls all the major mock drafts and gives like expected draft positions based on those averages and all those mock drafts. Jordan Addison has an expected draft position rank of 24. And
Okay.
Jack Campbell is, let's see, where's he at? I know he wasn't that much further down. He is at 45. So
Oh,
basically right where
in
PFF
lockstep
has
with
him.
PFF, yeah.
Right. So, okay, so here's the situation. If we are to take a guy like Addison, we have to start scouring for in the 30s and maybe even early 40s to go back up to get a Campbell. Now, is that
Correct.
something that you'd be willing to do where
Oh,
you might have to get rid of your third rounder, maybe pick something else up from the team you're trading with? Is that something you're willing to do, or do you want to just take Campbell here and try to
ooh.
find a receiver later?
Oh man, the second round trade up is so murky and muddied. Oh
Yeah.
boy. Oh, I f-
So let's look at some teams. Let's mess around with that. Let's
opportunity
just,
cost.
since you're able to do that, some teams that we could possibly trade up with. I think the Steelers, they could very well take Campbell at 32.
Yep,
So I don't want we'd obviously start talking after that, but
correct.
I think the Cardinals, the Texans, I think the Raiders are actually Raiders because I have a feeling the Panthers could also be looking around
Well,
that area.
click
The
on
Titans.
click on the PFF mock screen to make it scroll with you. I don't know if you're scrolling or not, but it's still on 27 for us, just for the viewer.
You're not seeing the drop down?
No.
All right, hold on. Why is not showing it?
Oh, there you go. Now move the Cowboys.
Okay. All right. So can you see the so you don't see the list of values once I click it?
No.
Okay. All right. So I'll again, once we get past 32, the Steelers, Texans at 33, Cardinals at
Yep.
34, Colts at 35, Rams 36,
Colts could
Seahawks.
be a potential. Seahawks
Yep.
could be a potential.
I think the
Raiders.
Titans, I don't think he makes it past 41. I think
Yeah.
41, 42 with the Jets. Titans, Jets. I think that's an area where he could go.
Yeah.
But again, you talked about it with Marino. You know, there's quite the drop after, especially if you're talking true mics.
Yes.
You know, Campbell's a true mic. I think Sanders can be. He can have some other cool roles to him.
Yes.
Simpson right now is not a true mic, but I
No.
think again this staff could probably train him up pretty well to be
And,
effective,
and
especially
so
putting him next to Milano.
from a value perspective, I'd love to go with a non-linebacker here and then hope that Trenton Simpson falls to 59.
Okay.
But I'm worried about that happening as well.
Right. All right. So what do you want to do? Wide receiver or linebacker here? Moment of truth.
Son of a bitch. Where's your head at? I'm thinking we take Campbell. Well, I'm thinking we make the pick.
Okay, make the pick.
I like more of the wide receivers late than I do linebackers. So even though I have Addison rated higher than Campbell, I would go Campbell. What do you think?
I have Addison higher, as I
So do
said, but it's not by much. He's like that last bar before the second round hits. He's right where we have him right now. All right, well let's.
This is so hard.
I know this is again. I'm glad we're not on the clock. Like literally.
I know. They'd be like, you guys got to make a pick. We're like, we're not ready yet, and then hang up.
All right, so let's go with the tried and true corn-fed linebacker from Iowa, training with Luke Kuechly, true Mike, transitions well into this defense. They run the same defense there. They're in the same type of program.
Yeah.
You're gonna hate us for it, but we're gonna take the linebacker here.
I hate us for it. Like I like it, but I also hate it. It's just I just think the value could be so much better, but also the need and the positional scarcity is an important piece.
Yeah, and there's a reason why the Bills haven't addressed this position.
Correct.
You know, they let Edmonds walk, and sure, they're going to tell you that Spector and Bernard and Dotson have a chance to start. I don't personally believe it.
No, and you like Terrell Bernard a lot,
and I do. I just don't. I don't want him as a stacked linebacker with his 30-inch arms. I can't picture it, and in his size, I don't care even if he gained 10 pounds. It still worries me. I like him in coverage, and I like him playing. He's heady, but when we're talking stacked linebacker with 6-man boxes all the time, a guy like Jack Campbell is kind of who you need. It's unfortunate they had to let Edmonds walk, you know, to get another guy that's similar in many ways, a little more tight-hipped, but he brings a lot to the table that I think Bills fans wanted to see from Edmonds. I think he may not have the range, but from the shoulders up, he's much further ahead than Tremaine was coming out of college, especially. I think his processor is top-notch in this class when we're talking about the linebacker position.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really good observation. Like I I don't think he has the ranges at Edmonds either. I don't think a lot of people do because Edmonds is a freak. Wow, Sanders went right at 58. That's funny. Because Edmonds is a unicorn in every sense of the word. But I do think from a mental processing standpoint and also from a coming forward, stacking and shedding, playing in the box standpoint, I think Campbell is a bit of an uptick from Edmonds. So, and especially when you're pairing him with somebody like a Matt Milano, who chaos creator, shoots gaps, is all about like making plays and causing havoc. Somebody like a Jack Campbell, who's able to diagnose all that, read it, and clean it up and finish, I think could be a nice combination for the Bills.
All right, so let's take a look at the tackles here at 59.
Ooh.
No one I'm pulling a trigger on, really.
I like Tyler Steen, but I think he might be more of a guard, and I like him in the third round.
He's an archetype fit. So Steen's an archetype fit. Wanya Morris is an archetype fit. Saldiveri, who I love, he's one of my crushes.
Him and Zach Kuntz were two old Dominion guys who were pretty cool.
Yeah. I think those guys are archetypes for the guard position. Wide receivers, Dell, Wilson, Rice, A.T. Perry, Cedric Tillman. Tillman's dope.
I like Tillman. I like Perry. What about interior defensive line?
Yep. Keanu.
Benton.
I know. And
we're
really going to piss people off.
We're really going to say back-to-back defense. But here's the thing with Benton, right? Because I spoke about him on the show on Disguised Coverage recently. Where are we? So there were 204 interior defensive linemen that had 50% of pass rush snaps in 2022. 204 of them. Keanu Benton was tied for third in PFF's pass rush productivity. For those who don't know, a formula that combines sacks, hits, and hurries relative to how many times they rush the passer. So he was third out of 204. He was also tied for fourth in quarterback hits. He was also fifth in pass rush productivity and true pass sets. He was also seventh in stop percentage versus the run out of 216 interior defensive linemen. And he had an average depth of tackle of 0.8. He is a very large human at,
he's good.
Where are we? 6'4", 315 pounds. You can line him up at the 3, a 2, a 1. He's even lined up over the nose or in a shade. He's got active hands. He's got the quickness and the hand technique to penetrate, but also the size to help linebackers stay clean at the second level. I also like the idea of, helping out your rookie Jack Campbell and your athletic, bursty gap shooter Matt Milano stay clean by getting someone like Keanu Benton. I really like Benton here.
Yeah, I love Benton. And, I watched his film prior to the Senior Bowl, watched, I think, 1 or 2 games. And I was like, okay, he's got some juice. He's got some size to him. But then there were some one-on-one pass rushes from the Senior Bowl where he was just so violent with his hands, throwing guys out of the way. He's got that size and strength, but he's very aggressive. He would be a perfect fit in the Bill scheme because he's up the field. He's not a guy that is going to win consistently stacking and shedding. He can, don't get me wrong, but he is an up the field guy, whether he's at 3 or nose, anywhere across the line. He's going to penetrate and create chaos. I think he's that kind of violent up the field defender. His club move, it just drops guys to the turf. But he's also very light on his feet. Again, he's quick for his size. And I just really like him as a defender. I do agree. I think Benton is a really good choice here at 59. It's right at, he's one of the top guys in the cluster. If we're looking at clusters here, I say Benton be one of them. Ika, again, I don't think he's a scheme fit, but he's pretty nasty and would do really well.
Also, in this conversation, the Bills have no defensive tackles signed past this season. And as of right now, depending on how you have them ordered, defensive tackle 3 and 4 are Jordan Phillips and Tim Settle. And like Eric, like we've talked about on the show, Tim Settle did not have the year that we would have wanted him to last year when you watch him on the tape or from an advanced metrics perspective. From a metrics perspective, he was one of the worst interior defenders in the NFL. Yeah, he was awful. Granted, he did have some injury concerns. And then Jordan Phillips, when healthy, is a really good piece. But at this point, not even just the shoulder, he pulled up lame against the Titans in week 2 last year. And this is something he continues to have soft muscle injuries going back to his time in Arizona after he left Buffalo the first time. You need reinforcements on the interior defensive line in 2023, but especially, beyond. And it also just happens that Benton is a scheme fit and a really good player.
Yeah, I think we go with Benton here. That one's pretty easy.
That's fantastic.
And you know, it was worrisome to start the offseason because obviously, you know, Edmonds hit the market. He was
Mhm.
gone. Then we were losing a guy like Jordan Phillips. Tim Settle, as you said, had a really down year, especially for what they got him to do. They were
Yeah.
going to lose Poyer. And when you talk about a too high shell team, losing guys like that right up the middle and losing that production right up the middle,
Yep,
losing those
spine.
leaders right down the middle of the defense, those are big losses. And so to replenish it with guys, again, low income type guys with Benton
Mhm.
and Jack Campbell up the middle, resetting those contracts at positions of priority, which this regime, Brandon Beane, since he's been in Buffalo and since he's been when he was in Carolina, have really
Mhm.
prioritized those D tackle positions and that linebacker position.
Absolutely. I wanna say the Baltimore Ravens at 86 took Jartavius Martin, and I love
Mm,
you and I both like Martin a lot, but
he's a
in
crush.
that defense with what he can do with his skill set, I think that's an awesome pick.
Like him and Hamilton in that, like stop
Right?
it, stop.
Right? So and
That's
then you
not
still got
fair.
Humphreys and Peter on there, Humphrey and
Yeah.
Peters on the outside. Like, man, that's such an awesome DB group. I love that pick.
All right. So where do we want to look here? I got wide receivers
Ooh.
and tight ends
So this is
queued
where
up.
from a receiver perspective, this is where it starts to get like muddied because now you're starting to look at skill set, you're looking at value. We still haven't addressed offensive tackle.
Yeah.
I mm, I like the idea of I'd like to go tackle whether now or okay, so
I
we're sitting
think
here in 91, back end of round 3. Ideally, I'd
mhm.
like to end up with Steen or Saldiveri with either this pick or the
Yeah,
next pick. I feel like
I'm down with either Steen, Saldiveri, or Warren. I'm
oh,
these
Carter
three
Warren, yeah.
guys are three guys I think more so for me, Saldiveri and Warren, I think can challenge
Mhm.
Spencer Brown. Again, I think Steen is a guard. Saldiveri, I think he can play tackle, and they should
Yeah.
start him there. And then again, 6'6", what
So
314, like
big. Yep.
315, so big, and he's
Huge.
very technical with his hands. I think we can get him in
Later.
round 4.
Cool.
So I would think
Same.
we need to look
I also
at
know
maybe
that
a
we
wide
usually
receiver.
can just from doing the mocks. I didn't want to screw it, but I know we could probably get him at 130.
So then,
So now
if we're looking at wide
receiver?
receivers, tight ends,
Any edges? Maybe?
just
I don't think there's any good ones available at this point. Oh, KJ Henry's cool.
yeah,
But
he
no,
didn't do it. The Clemson guys didn't do it for me. I just say that. I think
no.
Brooks,
I
he's
like
kind
him
of
as a
that.
rotation piece.
He's a guy that probably is going to bump inside, but he'd be a nice depth defensive tackle.
Mm,
I don't think the Bills would be
mm,
looking him at the end, or maybe even like a 4 or 5 tech for those odd front teams. But Young, I know he flashed a bunch because of his
mhm.
athletic testing, and
Yep.
he's got
He can
some
also, like, drop
juice
into
off the line.
coverage and do stuff. Yeah,
Right.
he's a really athletic dude. He's fun.
It's hard,
Colby
man.
Wooden
I
is
think.
cool, but he's not a scheme fit. Oh, so then I feel like we're skewing more towards receiver here
Hmm.
based on what we got. And then it comes down to skill set and scheme fit, which I also think is tied into the conversation of what is Khalil Shakir? Is he the
Right.
slot receiver? Is he the boundary receiver? So at this point, are we looking for more inside outside versatility? Are we looking more outside? Are we looking more slot based? I think a lot of that ties into what happens with Shakir. Out of all these guys that are like right on the screen right now, from Booty all the way down to Mingo, I like Hutchinson. My two favorites out of this, Tyler Scott is fun as well from
Hmm.
Cincinnati. I like Parker Washington and Mingo the
Yes.
most out of
Yes.
these
These are two
receivers.
guys I would target, and I wouldn't target them right now. That's the issue here.
So here's the thing, and this is gamesmanship. Mingo is listed there. He goes between this pick and 130 like at a 50-50 shot. I don't think it makes sense given where he's ranked. So there's a chance we don't get Mingo on the back end, even though he's rated lower potentially. So like from
Yeah.
a system perspective, I like Mingo a lot. I would love him in the 4th round, not necessarily in the 3rd.
Yeah. I think they're
Man,
very
these receivers.
similar players too when we're talking run after the catch type guys, thicker, type
Mm,
guys that can create those explosive plays. So yeah, those are the two guys I would be targeting here. And again, I'm not big on Reed, man. We talked about it prior
mhm.
to the
Yeah,
show.
doesn't do it for me.
He the few games I watched prior to the Senior Bowl, I was like, okay, okay. And then at the Senior Bowl, he didn't flash for me much.
Same.
Um, I just didn't
And
see him
even on the
winning
tape, he's
often. I
not.
don't know.
No,
Right.
and he doesn't separate a ton. He does make some really cool contested catches, like the Ohio State game is one that people point to, but he has to make really hard contested catches because he doesn't separate
Mhm.
physically, like with physicality or with speed. Um, oh,
Yeah, we're
I
kinda
think we
stuck
can
on this pick too because there's no trade, so we're
no,
gonna have to take
and
even if it
it's
is a
hard.
little reach.
So this is one where if you don't go receiver early, receiver gets muddy in the third round, just with how like this has kind of fallen. I
Mhm.
like the idea of addressing tackle, but to your point, I think we can get Saldiveri at 130. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Or again, or Carter Ward. One of those guys is going to be there. So
Yeah.
whatever. I'm fine. So then my thought is wide receiver. Oh man, if only Voorhees didn't tear his
I
ACL,
know.
I would go
Yeah.
Voorhees here in a heartbeat.
Yeah, we're pretty much, locked into wide
Receiver.
receiver. So, uh,
Who would it
you
be
like
down to
Mingo?
for you?
It's
Um,
Washington or Mingo.
yeah. I like Parker Washington. But I think the skill set and the size and the frame that Jonathan Mingo offers
Mhm.
is not currently present on the Buffalo Bills team. Somebody, so 6'2", 220 pounds, runs a 4.4, 640. The guy who can take one to the house with speed, or he can break a tackle from a linebacker or a safety and get vertical. What's also interesting with him, and we talked about him in the Senior Bowl. I was worried about his route running ability coming from such a heavy RPO based offense at Ole Miss, but he showed enough at the Senior Bowl that gave me confidence that he could develop into a real route runner in the NFL. I
Right.
like Mingo a lot. I'd be okay with him or Parker Washington. Parker Washington's a dude who he flashed a bunch last year on tape for Penn State, but then you see this year tough after the catch. He can play in the slot, but he also can line up as a Z. He's good with his release off the line of scrimmage. He's good on screens. He doesn't separate a ton in his routes either. I would like to see him like have more suddenness, which I don't think he's necessarily going to have. And what have we talked about, Eric, on the show? Like Josh Allen loves dudes who separate early and often.
Yeah.
I don't know if Washington is that guy, even though I do like him. I would lean Mingo here if we're going between
I
those
like
two.
that. I like where your head's at there. Um, I think either way, I think we're targeting Saldiveri and Mingo. Now, let's play realistically. If
Yes,
which are these both? I think both of these guys could very well go in the third round, and that's what is kind of
agreed.
sketchy about these simulators is I think both of these guys have those type of grades. And so yeah, we're trying to game the system here. Um, so I don't know. I think we just take who's
I
higher up
think
the
there's a
board.
good chance that in real life, Mingo could be gone before 91. Like, I don't
Oh
care that
yeah,
PFF is
right.
showing him as like he's ranked 148, especially in a wide receiver class that has a lot of redundancy in terms of size and frame, and that size and frame
Hmm.
is smaller slot or Z guys. And Mingo is a dude who can play in the slot. He can be your X, he could be your Z. He's a ball winner. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. There's not a lot of dudes like him in this class. I
He
think that
impressed me
could
at the
propel
Senior
him up,
Bowl with his route running. I
right?
thought I was
And
not
remember the
expecting that.
first, he was the first dude because I was talking about Mingo. Remember he had a rep on day one early where he looked slow, and you were like, I don't know about him, man. And then by the end of the day, he got
You're
better and
like,
better and
yep,
faster and
he did.
faster.
All
Yep.
right, let's take Mingo then. Let's move this along. Mingo there. Hope
Beautiful.
that one of the tackles that we like gets there.
Saldiveri should be there. I'm gonna pissed if this
Shit.
mock makes me look foolish and Saldiveri's not there. Which I think Saldiveri should be ranked higher than, again, PFF has him on their board as 128 or whatever. I think he could be a third round guy in real life.
Yeah,
So if we
yeah.
were able to get him in the fourth round here with 130, I think that's
It's
very good value.
it's funny because after the Senior Bowl, I started or after the combine actually, once all the measurables started coming out, I watched Saldiveri because he was an archetype fit, and I'm like, holy cow! And he played an offense that the head coach of ODU was the offensive coordinator of the Penn State Nittany Lions when
Mhm,
Gesicki and Saquon were there. So when you see Kuntz
mhm,
doing some of the
mhm.
same stuff that Gesicki does, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
And Kuntz was
And
also a Penn State transfer.
he was, yes. And so
Mhm,
I watched Saldiveri and I'm like, holy cow. So I messaged Brandon Thorne, obviously one of the top guys when it comes to offensive lineman. I go,
mm,
dude, have you watched Saldiveri yet? He goes, no, not yet, but why? And so we started discussing him. And I think he just finished his report like a few days ago. And he's like, okay, you are right about him, man. Like, he's a good player. I think he even has him projected in that 3rd round as well,
Third round range.
where I have him. So yeah, very, very good offensive player. And again, positional, a guy that could flex out. And there he is, 128. I think he's pretty much a lock here. What do you say?
Absolutely. He I was watching ODU for Kuntz, and I kept noticing him. So then I went back and watched multiple games of Saldivari. I love that pick, and I think it's also kind of a best of both worlds, right? Like, I think this gives Spencer Brown more of an opportunity to beat him out, but I also think like there's a good chance Saldivari could win that job, and even if he doesn't, cool. Now you've got more tackle depth that isn't David Quessenberry and Tommy Doyle.
Right. And again, that positional flex, he's a captain. He's played all of the offensive line positions, sometimes within the same game, which is so difficult. It's very Ryan Bates-like, right? There's a certain amount of, smartness, intelligence, and resiliency to do that. I like his processor, but I like his hands. He does that. You talked about feigning hands with Darnell Wright. He does some of the same things where he'll do a circle punch. So he'll show his hands and the guys go to knock it down, and he'll do the circle punch like this and then hit him. And he's able to anchor down versus guys. He's got some torque. I think he needs some work when it comes to some of the run game stuff. But again, when you talk about a leader, versatility across the offensive line, competition for Spencer Brown, I think this guy will compete with Spencer Brown at right tackle.
Absolutely. Like, I second that notion completely. Like, so upside is he wins your right tackle battle and he starts for you. Downside is he gives Spencer Brown a fight and then gives you depth on the outside. Like, you get the physicality, you get the athleticism, you get the hand technique. Like, I like this pick very, very. This is probably my favorite pick that we've made from a value plus need perspective. I think he ticks so many boxes and there's no downside.
Some of these edge guys I'm not even high on though.
No.
Fehoko, Ramirez, Abdullah, Diaby essentially looks like a defensive tackle to me. They used him. I know he tested really well. Yeah, I thought I would too, because he tested really well. And then it's like I watched this year's tape and then last year's tape, and they used him on pass rush downs. They bumped him inside, which is fine. But last year, he played more of a 4-eye, 5 tech, where he was basically a D end in a 3-4 type defense. I'm like, hold on. It didn't make sense to me. I don't know if he's someone that the Bills would go after, but these edge guys, they're really not doing it for me, especially when we're talking near the top of this list.
No, Lonnie Phelps has some juice to him, and he got Darnell Wright really good in the actual Senior Bowl, but his tape was too inconsistent for me. He's just like a ball of violence with everything that he does. Like, so you need to kind of rein him in a little bit. But he's got some juice to his game, but meh. It's funny that you said that about Diaby. Like, I saw the numbers for Diaby and like his like stats, and I was like, whoa, look at all the pressures in the sacks. And then I went into the game and I was like, oh. And tight end, Davis Allen, Zach Kuntz. Oh, I had a mock where I took Saldivari and Kuntz, and somebody commented and was like, you took 2 guys from Old Dominion. This mock sucks. And I was like, okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, it's hard because, again, those guys fall value-wise in the areas and positions that the Bills are looking to add some competition, or upgrade. So I could see, teams and guys that are doing these simulators, picking guys like that from the same school, because they just kind of fall perfectly when you're using the Bills. He's probably the best one there, in my opinion. I'm not big on Davis Allen. Pretty good blocker. But I don't know.
I like the upside of Kuntz. There's not much.
Yeah, exactly. The upside. I was just going to say with him is just, it's through the roof. I know the Bills are interested in Juice Scruggs. He's a center, but he's played guard as well. And he's, I believe he's another Philadelphia guy. For some reason, I had AJ start looking this up because McDermott talked about it a few years ago when they acquired Ryan Bates, guys from like the Philly or Pennsylvania areas. Like, he likes some of those blue collar town type guys that come from families like that outside of Philly in the Pittsburgh area. I'm pretty sure Scruggs, I'd have to look at AJ's spreadsheet because I literally had him look up all the players in this draft from like Pittsburgh or Philly. Asim Richards, the tackle from North Carolina, I believe he's one of them too. And the Bills have ties to Penn State, so I know that they are interested in Scruggs.
Scruggs went to a school I used to play against. He went to Cathedral Prep in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Erie, yep, there we go.
There you go, blue collar
And then
Pennsylvania.
exactly. And so McDermott commented on that. He likes some. Again, he's a guy that obviously went to school in Pennsylvania, so he's kind of familiar with some of the outskirts of those suburbs and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, man. This is tough because Saldiveri, again, you got Saldiveri, you got Bates, you have positional flex guys. Do you need to get another center? Probably not.
And also like usually who's available later, Alex Forsyth from Oregon, a later round guy. I liked some of his tape. He's more pure center. I also think it's cool when dudes don't wear gloves and don't wear knee braces in college, and he does both of those things, which is interesting. No gloves and no knee braces, but he could be a dude that I think we could get at 205. Yeah, this one is like I like the idea of Kuntz, and I made that joke earlier, the two ODU guys. But I like his size and the frame, right, is awesome with how unique he is at 6'7".
Let's go with him then.
Yeah, right.
I'm
like
you.
there's so much.
You don't have to sell me on him. You don't.
Cool.
I'll go bring up some film of him because I do have some on him. Again, he played in the same offense that Gesicki did when he was at Penn State. I think his head coach at ODU is Rainey, Rick Rainey, I think, or Rain. He again did a lot of the same things. Athletic guy. I think he's a better blocker. Because I swear Gesicki was allergic to blocking. Kuntz is a better blocker. He's
Gesicki
more functional.
is a power slot. He is not even a tight end.
Yes, he's not even a tight end, right? No. But this guy he's a big dude, a Bills archetype. He's more of a positional blocker, so he's not going to use power to get to create that displacement. But he does do some interesting things with it. You know, his ability to drop his hips to create that lift to get guys moving. I think he's got the tools, as I say on the screen there, like the tools to be an effective blocker. I don't think he's going to be quite the plus blocker, but I think he can do some things, whether he's flexed off the line of scrimmage and moved post snap or not. But dude, his length and athleticism and just that catch radius and his ability to line up in the slot or out wide and then just push vertically down the field and either catch the ball or just to lift coverage. He's got that type of speed and vertical speed to lift coverages from the tight end position.
This is ridiculous. So his official combine measurables: 6'7", 255 pounds, 34-inch arms. And with those 34-inch arms, he put up 23 reps on the bench, which is legit with that arm length. That's legit.
Yes.
Right? That's strong, dude. And then at 6'7", 255 pounds, he ran a 4.55 40-yard dash. At 6'7", 255, he ran a 1.57 10-yard split, a 6.87 3-cone, a 4.2 20-yard shuttle. He had a vertical jump of 40 inches, a 10.8 broad. Athleticism, ball of talent, physicality. I think this is the game against Virginia Tech that you literally have up on the screen. Like he had the game winner in this game in the slot. And I think this rep you're about to show, he's got some snap to him that I wasn't expecting for a guy of his size and length, right? It was
player. Cool. This is pretty interesting. So Player Profiler does comps for guys. Kuntz, his best comp is Mike Gesicki, and so
it's funny, but I also hate it because he's a better blocker.
I know he is a better blocker, but as you said, with all those measurables and that height and that size, you wouldn't think he'd be this athletic. Watch the turn on this play. It's a two-way go, and then look at him just snap that route off. Like
look at
that right there. I did not see that coming from him again over the middle field. And we always talk about it. That's where Josh Allen needs some more targets. Some guys over the middle, you know, whether they're guys with size to sit in some of those zones that he can trust to catch it and not drop it, or just create that separation on some of those routes over the middle. The Bills need to attack the middle of the field more. I think Gesicki. I think Kuntz, he is the comp to Gesicki. I think he can do a lot of those things, but he does offer a little more grit than Gesicki, as you said, more of a power slot type guy.
Very fair. And I also think, you know, with his size and athleticism, I think he also helps in the red zone. Like you get kind of an easy button in the red zone with his size. And okay, you go 12 in the red zone with him, and are you going to stay in nickel with a smaller nickel defender against him, or do you put a linebacker on him? Like, I think that potentially opens up some easy button opportunities for you in the red zone, which was an area that the Bills got better in as the season went on. But like we broke down early in the year, they had some struggles down there.
All right, so we're at pick 205, last pick of this draft. I don't know what are you looking for this area. Obviously they got to
Pure
have
best
some
player
special
available.
teams.
Yes.
I really like a guy that I always gravitate to, and I don't even know if he's here now. Cameron Mitchell from Northwestern. I really, really
Oh,
like him, but I
of
don't
course.
see him here. So I'm out on him. What other positions you want to look at?
I usually, by default, I really love Muhammad Ibrahim, the running back from Minnesota, and
Mm,
I take him every time here. But for the sake of realism, oh boy, I kind of just want to go. Now you're looking at special teams, or if there's anybody who fell that has some kind of positional value.
right.
Is there any? What do the centers look like? Alex
Good boy,
Forsyth is
Forsyth.
there. That's cool. I don't know. So is a guy who I saw you and Thorne talking about him. I haven't watched his
Yeah.
tape. Is he a cool dude? He's a good dude.
Yes. So this is crazy. I mean, this is super late in my opinion. I have I want to say like a fifth on him or sixth.
Okay.
I think it's fifth. But his game, I talked to Thorne about him because he's like, dude, the Bills are interested in this guy. You need to
Mm,
start studying him. So I studied him as soon as I got home yesterday. And he reminds me of like Quentin Spain, like in a good way,
mm,
where his upper body is just so thick. It's like grizzly bear type look where he's a little
mm,
heavier from the waist up. He's thick,
mm-hmm,
and he's very powerful. And when he in pass protection, he just widens the passing lanes when he's passing those stunts. Like he just washes people out with his long
mm,
arms and strength. He's more of a two-handed puncher, but he lands them at a high rate. And he just moves people. He's a people mover, much like Quentin Spain was, especially like you get him on the move. He just
mm.
washes people out. Remember Spain on those pin and pull runs
Yep.
from years ago? Like he would just
Oh
just
yeah.
eliminate people so much so he'd be on top of him. The guy would disappear. So is very much like that. It remind me of him. A little Roger Saffold to his game, but not as violent as Saffold was
Mm-hmm,
in his prime. But
mm-hmm.
um, I do think he's he's a decent guard that again the Bills are interested in. I'll just say that the Bills are interested in him as a day 3 guy along the offensive line.
I'm cool
I
with
just
making
don't.
that
I don't know if we need him though. That's the thing. You
fair.
know, with what we picked here, I don't know if we need him.
I'm
Saldivari,
always okay going into the trenches. Like, yeah, I'm fine
Mingo, yeah.
always restocking that cupboard. Like DBs and trench guys, I'm always okay with.
You
Yeah.
can't
So
go
yeah,
wrong. Let's
him.
go. Let's go with him.
Do it.
Let's go with
I'll
him.
say when in
Let's
doubt,
go with them.
go to the
That'll
trenches.
give us a reason to put out the film and
That's a good point.
to study him some more, and for you guys to dig in a little more. I'll post something. I have all the film cut up. I'll post something
Nice. It's funny
after
because
this.
I have him down after I saw you guys talking about him. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like this is a dude I need to get to.
Yeah,
Um,
no, he's a
this is
mean
awesome.
dude. I think with again the offensive line and protect Josh Allen, I think that's you can't go wrong going with a guy, especially late that you could
Yeah.
develop if you like him. So
Absolutely. I don't want to hear also, I
Campbell,
don't want to hear anybody from anybody about their grades. I don't want to hear anybody being like, oh, you guys got a C minus. Those grades are arbitrary and they
hey,
mean
listen,
nothing.
and like we should expect that. They're grades. They're
Actually,
PFF
that's true.
grades.
That's
So
true.
that's really
Very true.
par for the
I
course.
was gonna say
So
it's on
so
brand.
let's why would we take offense to it when we say all year, hey, take grades with a grain of salt. So we
That's
got
fair.
an F though for Mingo.
I
I
hate well, yeah,
I
because they
don't
have
get
them
it. Yeah.
which so that one from their system, like if we're not even talking about actual football, their mock, right?
Mhm.
They have him ranked as their 148th guy, but he consistently goes between 85 and 130. Like
Mhm.
regular, there's a ton
Yeah.
of mocks where he doesn't even make it to the Bills. So how are you going to give us an F because you have him ranked at 148, but your mock simulator makes him go like 40 picks higher with
Right.
regularity?
Yeah, yeah,
Stupid
it doesn't
system.
make any sense. I like it, man. Campbell in the first,
Yeah,
Benton, 2 guys right there. You got them locked down. The middle of your defense is locked in for
absolutely. Top
several
that
years.
spine. Yeah.
Mingo in the 3rd round, bigger, thicker, as you said, not really a guy on the wide receiver room in the wide receiver room that has some of his traits. And
Mhm.
as you said, after this year, there are only 3 guys under contract, 2 or 3 guys under contract in that wide receiver room.
Mhm.
He's a guy that, again, could be one of those players that if you're trying to build a basketball team in the wide receiver room, have
Oh,
different skill
nice.
sets. I think he's one of those guys. Still the very Swiss Army knife when it comes to playing along the offensive line. In round 4 at pick 130, Kuntz, his teammate,
Mhm.
Kuntz, again, upside as a tight end, and then City So from Eastern Michigan, a developmental guy, but offers a lot of the traits that Aaron Cromer and assistant offensive line coach Austin Gund do like. And I think he's a powerful interior offensive lineman that they will look to develop.
And I think with the picks here that we made, they also kind of lead into the conversations that the Bills themselves are going to have
Mhm.
in this draft in terms of you really only have one hole, which is really that linebacker spot.
Yeah.
And then everything else are you have positional upgrades or role upgrades. And it's just going to be this tinkering of which one do you have ranked higher in terms of urgency needed to upgrade that position? And also, again, how does the board fall? Like,
Mhm.
so for example, if we played, say we went with Addison in
Yeah.
round 1, right? We're not getting the linebacker that
Mhm.
the Bills need unless we then trade and sacrifice resources to go up and get a Campbell, or even if you like Simpson, you're still going to have to sacrifice resources to get those guys. So with how people are thinking the board falls, the Bills are in a, and again, I don't even think they'd pick someone like a Dorian Williams because I don't think it makes sense, but I think the Bills are in much better shape with Jack Campbell and Jonathan Mingo than they are with Jordan Addison and Dorian Williams, or Jordan Addison and Demario Overshown, like with
Right.
what you need. And that's what you're playing with. It's not necessarily in a vacuum, this is the best thing for round 1. You're trying to build the team as a whole and upgrade as much of the team as possible. And especially with respect to premium positions, I think
Mhm.
we did that and also fostered some of the conversation in terms of how that balancing act works between value and positional scarcity across the board in each round.
Yeah, you have to pay attention to those drop offs, and it's hard. Like you said, the middle linebacker is pretty much the only need. And again, we talked about the tackles,
Mm,
especially early. Um, Spencer Brown, can you upgrade it? Yes.
mhm,
Could you have upgraded it at 27 in that? Probably. But when you're talking value and the drop off at linebacker, as you said, you have to lean towards an important position in this defense. I mean, you have to. It's hard to ignore Jack Campbell. He stands out on the board,
mhm,
regardless of what he's listed as. He stands out at a position of need, at a position of importance. You've heard us for years talk about how important Tremaine Edmonds is.
yep,
You kind of had to expect that not only us taking him, in the simulator, taking Campbell in this situation, but damn well that this team is considering it at that
mhm,
position at 27. They have to. There's a reason why they didn't go out and spend, some money on some of those veteran players, some of those, the Levante Davids, the Bobby Wagners. They could have made some numbers work for those guys,
yeah.
but they said, you know what? We're not going to offer them a contract and then still think about the future at this position of need, but also a position of importance in this defense under Sean McDermott now. So it's just too hard to pass up Campbell again at the end of the first round when he has, when some of those guys that went at the end of the first round are going to have second round grades.
Yeah. And that's, I think people get caught up in that so much. Like, usually on any given year, there's what, like 15 to 20 guys that go in the first round that have like true first round grades, like any ballpark year. And when you're sitting here at the end of the first round, usually the guys you're going to get there most likely probably have a second round grade. And again, I think that's fine. And I think you hit everything on the head when it comes to Campbell. Like, even somebody who you and I both liked, and we talked about him in the film room, Levante David, like the idea of him filling that Edmonds role, right?
Yeah.
The Bills reached out to him when he had already like basically signed with Tampa Bay. Like, he came out and said it. So that the Bills didn't even kick the tires on him initially when he was a free agent. They basically kind of waited till the end and were like, I felt like they were like, let's give him a call. Why not? And then they were like, oh, he's already signed. Cool, whatever. Like, they didn't make an effort to really address this position. As you bring
Right.
up some tape of Jack Campbell, like, I mean, and you see the size with how big he is at 6'5", 246, but I think he covered better than I thought he would. Like, you can
Right.
watch him match in coverage against, he's picking up slot receivers, and he can mirror running backs and tight ends, and cover down on underneath routes and clamp down. I like the way he leverages gaps. I don't think he's a drop off coverage wise versus Edmonds, but that's not necessarily a knock against him. It's because Edmonds is a unicorn, but he gets the job done in coverage. He's good in coverage, and I do think he's an uptick coming forward and from the neck up.
Right, and we talked about his processor versus run. I think he's better at this point than Edmonds in that regard. But I do think when it comes to pass coverage, his recognition of routes
Oh, good
is
call.
also a better processor, in my opinion. Now, Edmonds does have that range and some of that length because Campbell has shorter arms,
Yes.
especially if you're talking compared to Edmonds. But again, most people do.
Yeah.
But
Especially for a dude who's 6'5".
right. For the archetype, he's actually got shorter arms, but it doesn't hinder his play when it
Yeah.
comes to stack and shedding. He still knows how to, stack and leverage his gap quite well, as you'll see in some of these plays. But I think his processor from top to bottom is better than Edmonds, whether he's coming downhill versus run or those route combinations. Again, they play a similar system at Iowa that Sean McDermott is going to employ in Buffalo and has employed in Buffalo. A lot of leverage type plays where you're going to have 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s and passing and communicating. And there's really not a better linebacker in this class when it comes to communicating and getting guys lined up than Jack Campbell. So that's why we think he's a perfect fit, even if it is, again, a few picks earlier than what most people want to take a linebacker this year. We just think he is just too much of a fit to pass up or risk losing by taking someone else at 27 and then trying to, again, finagle the top of the second round and maybe missing out on a Campbell, because there are teams that are looking for linebackers, whether they are Mikes or Wills.
Absolutely. And that's such a huge piece, right? The Mike and Will conversation. I feel like all linebackers are not equal from a positional skill set and fit standpoint. And, we keep seeing a lot of names thrown out there that aren't necessarily those fits for the Bills. And when you're talking about the talent, you're talking about the fit, you're talking about who the player in person is. It's really hard to find somebody better than Jack Campbell to match what the Bills need at that position. And we now officially have a live mock under the Cover One film room belt. How do you feel? How does it feel?
That was a lot tougher. There was a lot more
intense. I'm sweating.
pressure. There's a lot more pressure than just running them on your phone or whatever. No, that was fun. I do think that was. I think those are legit questions and discussions that are having, and so that's why this exercise is always fun to do this time of year. So that was awesome time.
And it really, I don't do mocks until after like the first-ish second week of free agency, because free agency changes team needs so much up and down the board. And I've really been ramping up in March. And as we sit here and do this one, we are fully into April, and the draft is only like several weeks away. We are in draft month. It is almost draft miss. So this mock draft kicks off some of our more mock type activity here in the Cover One film room, in terms of kind of just moving us forward for everything. And Eric, it's an exciting time as we really start to get more of an idea of who could potentially be there at different positions, what the Bills need, which players can fit those needs. And then us here in the film room and on our Twitter accounts, at Cover One or Eric's personal at Eric J. Turner, or myself at @pro__Ant, all the breakdowns and the film pieces, whether, on our Twitters and socials or here on the show, to really kind of put those players' skill sets and fits into perspective. It's a really exciting time.
Yeah, and so, go to our handles and search our handle and some of these guys' names. We've broken down most of these guys, whether they're at the Senior Bowl or, again, just over the last few weeks after the Combine and whatnot. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. And this is one of those episodes that will translate quite well in audio form. So if you're not able to watch this live, make sure to subscribe on all of our, podcast platforms, especially Apple, because there was a glitch with our network where for some reason they switched up their format. So, we've lost a lot of you followers. So make sure you go ahead and follow us on Apple and subscribe to the channel so that you are notified when these podcasts do drop.
Absolutely. And we're going to be having you covered here in the film room these next several weeks, and obviously leading up to the draft. And then Of course, there's going to be no place better for you folks to come to once the Bills make these draft pick selections at the end of April in terms of breaking down who and what they got and why they got them and what it means for this team.
The best part. That's the best part. Like, I like projecting and thinking about what guys would fit in the Bills scheme and all that. But I like once it's done, those guys are chosen, and then we get to dive into their film even more. And that's when your mind, because we're again X's and O's film junkies, where you can start really implementing like, oh, they could do this with this guy, and this is how they could use them. And that's where it's really fun. Post draft is content is some of my favorite content, because then we can start legit, projecting these guys into the offense or defenses of the Bills.
Absolutely. I second that completely. I am tremendously giddy and excited for this month. This is one of the best times of the year. And we hope that you folks enjoy riding with us here in the Cover One Film Room every single week. We know this was a technically like non-live episode. This will be published. So we appreciate all you folks who tuned in and checked us out. As we kind of make some scheduling things work to be able to get this content out to you. If you enjoyed this episode, please drop a like on this video here on YouTube. Please subscribe to the Film Room and the Cover One channel here on YouTube. As Eric mentioned, if you're listening on one of the audio platforms, that's cool too. Thank you very much for your listen or your download. Whatever platform you are listening to this show on, please drop a rating or a review, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, whatever platform you use. Please subscribe to the channel and the show as well. Like Eric mentioned, there was some glitchy things that kind of messed up things for us on the audio side for the entire brand. So hit that subscription wherever you are, like, review, rate, all that kind of stuff. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show is. We appreciate you folks more than you will ever know. I'm literally just like excited. Like, I just like doing mocks, and we're getting closer. Every episode of the Film Room is another week closer towards the NFL draft. And I'm excited. Eric, you're excited. We hope all of you are excited, and we hope you continue to tune in to the show every single week as we continue to break down anything and everything. Well, I guess everything and everything still works. It drives it home when it comes to anything having to do with the Buffalo Bills and the hows and whys behind it all. With that being said, for myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Eric Turner, this has been another episode of the Cover One Film Room. We will see you next week. Godspeed, and as always, go Bills.